Hello, my name is Ivy Prosper, and I tell stories from Africa and the African diaspora. And today is a really exciting episode because I have not only a man who's making an impact in the community, but it's just an honor to have any bit of his time while he's here in Ghana. Attorney Ben Crump, who is known as the Black Attorney General, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So it's like you are known for doing things for our community that others are not willing to do. For anybody who doesn't know who you are, because I know that the majority of my audience is in the diaspora,
Yes, ma'am.
but there might be some people watching who don't know much about what you do. So do you think just introduce yourself and what you do?
Certainly. And first, I want to say thank you so much, Ivy, for using your platform and your voice to give not only people a voice that might not have it, but to educate us and elevate us on the diaspora. So I'm forever grateful for that, because now more than ever, we have to let our children know that our history did not begin in slavery and it will not end in slavery. It's not 1619. No, that's what they want us to think. We have at least 10,000 years of documented Black history and Black culture. So thank you again.
Thank you too.
I'm a civil rights attorney. I have represented some of the most high-profile cases in America. My personal hero, Thurgood Marshall, was my trailblazer. He's my North Star. And so when I represented Trayvon Martin, who was killed by a neighborhood watch volunteer with a 9mm gun while he was walking home with a bag of Skittles and a can of iced tea, it became the #1 news story in the world. And then I represented Michael Brown, who was killed in Ferguson, Missouri by police officers, and all the neighborhood witnesses there, all those Black people said he had his hands up, and the rallying call, "Hands up, don't shoot," became a viral proclamation and protest. And then we represented a lot of these other names that we've come to know through tragic circumstances, whether it's Breonna Taylor, whether it's Amir Locke, Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, Tyree Nichols, Sonia Massey. I represent the family of Malcolm X. We represent the family of Henrietta Lacks, and we've achieved historic justices. In many of these cases where people said there was no way we could achieve justice, but we have a calling, we have a mission. And as my grandmother taught me when I was a little boy, you don't do things just because the result of them. You do things because they're the right thing to do. And so all these cases I think it's the right thing to do for us to speak up for our Black people and our Black culture. It's the right thing to do to stand up for our Black people and our Black culture. And it's the right thing to do to fight for our Black people and our Black culture. Now more than ever, when there seems to be this rise of white supremacy in America and beyond, well, we have to be unapologetic defenders of Black life, Black liberty, and Black humanity.
I agree. I wonder if you've always had this in you, because it takes a certain character to do this, because I know that everybody wants to fight, but sometimes the fear of going against the powers that be may stop somebody, paralyze them from actually doing something. What made you decide that this is what you wanted to do?
Well, it was my life lessons growing up as a very impoverished young man, raised by my mother, who was a single parent, who gave me and my two little brothers everything a person could sacrifice. She worked 2 jobs, cleaning hotel rooms and laundry in the morning, then going to work second shift at a shoemaking factory in the afternoon. But that beautiful Black woman, who's my mother, Helen Crump, did everything to make sure that her boys had a roof over our head, food on the table for our stomachs and hope for our hearts. And it was her when they did school integration and they bused us to the white neighborhood. And I noticed that the white school had the best facilities, the best books, the best technology. And I said, well, I wonder why they got so much and we seem to have so little. And my mother told me that it was because of Brown, the NAACP case, Brown versus the Board of Education, and a lawyer named Thurgood Marshall, where you at least get to have the technology and so forth to be able to compete on an even playing field at your schools. And I said right then, when I grow up, Ivy, I'm going to be like Thurgood Marshall, and I'm going to fight to make it for people who live in my community and people who look like me have an equal opportunity at success and having a better life for our children, having a better right to the constitutional protections that every citizen get. So every day I wake up with the same objective as that little 9-year-old boy. I'm fighting for Black people to have equal opportunities. And you said something about fear. That's the first battle in any situation. You have to overcome your fear. Bravery is not the absence of fear, but it's the ability to overcome that fear. So when I'm fighting the federal government, when I'm fighting these major corporations, whether it be Google, whether it be Wells Fargo Bank or Bank of America, these huge corporations and entities, the first thing I say is, well, we won't be defeated because we're afraid to go take on Goliath. And once you overcome that first fight, then anything is possible. Anything is possible. And that's why I tell young lawyers, I tell brothers and sisters in business, you first got to win the battle of fear, and that's within yourself. And then you go fight. And you have that DNA of our ancestors, Ivy, who have always overcome what they say are impossible obstacles. Well, it's impossible until it's possible.
Exactly, exactly. And I think about the case, the Henrietta Lacks case. When that first came to you, I mean, when I read about it, I was like, this seemed like an impossible case.
Yes.
What was it that you saw about it that you were like, I can do this?
Well, it was more about the cause. I believe we have to fight in two courts when you're fighting for Black people to get justice, I think in America and anywhere in the world. First, you have to fight in the court of public opinion. And if you win in the court of public opinion, then maybe, just maybe, you might get the fight in the court of law. It's no guarantee, but I understand that that's the first fight. So when I thought about this terrible injustice done to this Black woman who wasn't isolated, they were victimizing Black men and women all across America as a result of medical racism, whether it was the Tuskegee syphilis experiment in Alabama, where they were injecting Black men with syphilis and they wouldn't treat it even though there was a cure. I mean, just even they would have relationships with their women and have children who developed syphilis and nobody would treat them. And this happened for decades. Then you had the Mississippi appendectomy, which was where you had Black women going into hospitals for routine medical procedures, and they were sterilizing them so they couldn't have children. The most famous being Fannie Lou Hamer, who said, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. Yeah, at 23, she was sterilized. And thank God she was educated to be able to find out what was happening and to let people know that this was happening in the South in America in states like Mississippi, Georgia, Louisiana. And then in Baltimore, Maryland, you had Johns Hopkins Hospital, which was at the time the leading medical research institution in America, and they believe in the world. And they were trying, Ivy, to find out if the human cell could survive outside the human body. And so Henrietta Lacks, and I know a lot of people know it, but more people need to know about it, especially our people in the diaspora. I mean, her name should be spoken with reverence. And I know Oprah Winfrey made the movie The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks. But all our children need to know about this sister. 31 years old, she was intelligent. She was beautiful. She was a mother of five, a wife. I mean, they want us to believe she was illiterate and that she was a nobody because then they could justify what they did. But Ivy, she went in, she had cervical cancer in the very early stages. They brought in and they never tried to treat her. Never once. They were going to use her like a guinea pig, like a lab rat, like they were using all Black people and during those times. And in Baltimore, when we interviewed older people, they said they would tell the children, don't get caught around John Hopkins at night because they'll snatch you up and put you on the operating table. They were the original body snatchers. And so Henrietta Lacks gets in there. They put uranium rods in her female genitalia, this radiation. And you know how bad radiation is to put radiation rods inside you. Even now when you have cancer, they give you chemotherapy to try to minimize the use of radiation. Well, they didn't care about that with Black people. They put those radiation rods and they went and cut out part of her good cells and they cut out part of the cancer cells. And then the next day they just sent her back home. And she lived her last 8 months, you know, a painful death. Her family talked about how she would scream out in agony, in the middle of the night. And it's almost biblical, Ivy, when you think about it, how she died and what a sacrifice she had, but to give the world this miraculous gift. Because, and I'm not surprised, Ivy, that it was a Black woman who had cells strong enough to survive outside the human body, because Henrietta Lacks became the first human being in the course of human history for her cells to be strong enough to be able to survive outside the human body. And not only did they survive, but they would regenerate every 24 hours.
That's fascinating.
It is, and every pharmaceutical company in the world have made billions upon billions upon billions of dollars from this Black woman's genetic materials. I mean, every medical advancement in the last 70 years have been because of her HeLa cells. And so, tragically, her children, her family, haven't received one red penny until now. We bought this case because I knew if we could just expose the injustice, then we would have a chance to get in the courtroom. And we were able to get in the courtroom under the theory of unjust enrichment. And we were able to make Henrietta Lacks' family finally get some measure of justice. And we got a lot of more companies to sue, but the first one has settled, and now we got 300 some odd companies more to say Henrietta Lacks' life matters.
And her family, how did they feel after this was settled?
It was a great day because everybody told them, Ivy, you would never be able to recover. If you read the book, The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks, they in the end of the chapter, they said, well, there's never going to be a legal recovery. And, you know, when they tell us no, that we can't get justice for Black people, that just reinvigorates me to have even greater conviction to say, well, it won't be because we didn't try.
I know your time is limited. I have a...
No, take your time. We're going to probably give you 10 more minutes.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
I wanted to know about the government putting through that, was it the George Floyd?
Justice and Policing Act.
Yes, the Justice and Policing Act. They passed it, but it hasn't really been put into law. And this was supposed to create some reform after what happened with George Floyd.
Well,
What is happening? Do you have any confidence that it's going to actually pass, especially in our current administration, in the current administration in the U.S.?
yeah, well, a couple of things I've read. It's hard to believe that in about 4 weeks, it will be the 5-year anniversary of the tragic killing of George Floyd, where he said, "I can't breathe," 28 times, and the officer kept his knee on his neck. Um, and what happened in America on what was this transformational case. And I mean, it was a landmark moment, not just in America, but in the world, because once you saw that video, you couldn't unsee the video. I mean, it was so in. If you learn,
Like
yes,
everywhere.
ma'am. Yeah. And it passed the United States House of Representatives that were Democratic control, but it did not pass the United States Senate that was Republican controlled. And so, even though there was great momentum, the bill never passed. And so President Biden never got to sign the bill into law. Now, with President Trump, we doubt he would ever sign such a bill. But I'm not discouraged. I refuse to have a defeatist mentality because I understand history and I understand it was the tragic killing of Emmett Till in 1955 that made possible a decade later for the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and 1965. And so it's about making incremental progress. Sometimes, you know, you have to put him at us a journey to justice. Sometimes you take 2 steps forward and then you take one back, but you forever must keep your eyes on the prize, just like our ancestors, whether it's Marcus Garvey or whether it's W.B. Du Bois or uh, Joseph Kenyatta, Angela Davis. Everybody kept their eyes on the prize despite the obstacles that they were facing. And that's the lesson that we must all take heed to with this rise of white supremacy. You know, we have to have as much conviction in Black liberation as they have in white supremacist beliefs.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for a young person who may be considering going into being a civil rights lawyer? What are the things that they need to know to prepare themselves for this type of job, this type of career? It's really a mission, really, isn't it? It's really a life purpose.
It is a mission. And the one thing I take away from this riveting trip to Ghana for me, even though this is my 3rd trip to Ghana, this is the most time I've spent uh, learning and appreciating the history and the culture of Ghana and Africa and the west coast of Africa in a more profound way. And so what I would tell young people who want to be civil rights lawyers and social justice warriors today is just like in the United States, they teach us about George Washington and Abraham Lincoln and Thomas Jefferson. Well, we need to make sure our Black children also know about Lumumba and Kenyatta and Nkrumah. We have to make sure they understand that, Ghana was the first sub-Saharan country to gain its independence in 1957, and they gained that independence by time back to people like Marcus Garvey and the Pan-African movement and, understanding the objectives of Lumumba and of Kenyatta and that Mandela. We got to make sure they put just as much respect on those great Black leaders' names as they put on these white European names who were supposed to be liberators and profound thinkers. So if it was so spectacular for these white Europeans who founded America, why isn't it equally spectacular what our Black leaders were doing in Africa? And so that's the lesson I take away from it, that we cannot relegate our history to just the 400 years that they want to emphasize from 1619, when we were bought as slaves, to now. No. What we have to say is we have over 10,000 years of documented history in Africa. And that's what we got to make our young people minds expand. I visited the boys' estate, and I thought it was incredible what Nkrumah had asked Debbie Du Bois to do, to come and help chronicle the history of Africa, where we all have a mission now, I think, to chronicle our African history for our children, especially while they're attacking Black history on every level. And I'll say this, I believe so much in what Marcus Garvey was trying to teach us when he said, the diaspora, we're all connected. We have to take the trip back to Africa. And I get it. Some people can't financially do it, but I want you to know you can take the trip back to Africa on a psychological and an intellectual level with the advent of technology. I mean, you can learn about all 54 countries in Africa and the heritage and the culture, how they all grew in to make us a special people that are, unconquerable. We just survive no matter what they try to put us through. And their DNA flows through our body. And so we need our children to know that. They got to know that, this, what we're going through now, isn't that significant. We will overcome it because Black people have been through too many thunderstorms to worry about these raindrops.
Profound. This has been a really great conversation. I want to wrap it up with something light.
Okay.
Since you've been in Ghana, I want to know, this is your third trip, what are some memorable foods that you enjoy in Ghana? I did for the lighthearted way to end off. Memorable foods that you like or memorable experiences that you had.
Okay. Well, on the food, I'm trying to get back to my fighting weight, Ivy. So I'm being very
Fighting weight?
careful.
You were a boxer?
Well, that's a metaphor. I fight in the courtroom. We fight every day in every courtroom across America, and now we're gonna do some fighting here in Africa for our people. But I think the most memorable experience I had here in Ghana was visiting Du Bois and with Ambassador Erica Bennett with the Diaspora African Forum, and her educating us on how we got to fight harder to strengthen the bonds of unity between the diaspora all over the world. And just being in Independence Square with the Black Star above us, it made me think so much of the legacies of Garvey and the legacies of Du Bois and Ida B. Wells and those. And so it's a sense I can't explain. I look at your hue or my hue. I saw so many brothers who had similar facial features as I had. And it just made me know that this is from whence I come from. This is home. And home, it doesn't matter where you're at. Home is in the heart.
Home is in the heart. Thank you so much, Mr. Ben Crump. This has been a wonderful conversation. A pleasure meeting you again.
Yes.
I hope you didn't really get to talk the first time that I met you because you came in with your
Omega
Sci-Fi. And they all came in, woo, I can't do it.
Yeah.
So this has been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
No, thank you, Queen, and continue to be a voice for our people.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for watching this episode today. And don't forget to share this video. This is a very important conversation we've had. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.